Greetings, Commanders. This is Commander Meccan, and today we're going to talk about everything we've learned so far about the new Titans. With the release of the new Thargoid Pulse Neutralizer module, we're finally able to access the interior of the maelstroms, and a few things have changed. For now, like when you actually drop down into a maelstrom, you're dropped straight into the caustic area, which didn't used to be the case. It's just this minor adjustment, but it's something to be aware of. As you can see, my caustic stream launcher is already filling up. With the pulse neutralizer, which acts pretty much like a shutdown field neutralizer, but with a range of 0, which means it only protects yourself. You cannot use it to protect other commanders. You are now able to finally bypass the shutdown pulse that is generated by the interior of the maelstrom cloud. The way it works is you press and hold it like a shutdown field neutralizer. It will drain the system capacitor, and it will protect you from the pulse, which is about to come. As you get the pulse to pass over you, it will also generate a lot of heat. So having a heat sink handy is helpful, although it's not required, as you generally can tank the damage if it comes to that. Let's see, holding. Alright, it passed through me. You see my heat went up. I popped that heat sink so to cool off. And we keep pushing through. I will also use a repair limpet while I'm at it, since I took some damage on the way to get here. A single caustic sink launcher is effectively enough to get it all the way into the interior of the cloud. The interior of the cloud does not have caustic inside of it, so you don't need caustic sink launchers while you're inside of there, although they are handy in situations where you get caustic missiles launched at you, so they're not completely useless. As you can see, it fired another pulse, but because I'm already basically inside, I did not get hit by it, even though I didn't use the neutralizer at this stage. And here it is, appearing from the shadows, the new Thargoid mothership, the Titan. The Titan, besides the obvious fact of being large, and has a series of activities and special effects that are coupled with it. And we'll talk about those in a moment. Like, I think the general taxonomy is where I would start. Like this, when we are approaching a Titan from the rear, as you can't see the big maw type of structure which is in the front, it has 8, call them wings or call them petals, like call them whatever those 8 things are. Like, but 8 is a common area, a common sort of number that's somehow associated with Thargoid. So it's got 8 of those. It's got also these vents on the underside. It's got 2 different vents on its underside, and we'll talk about the 2 in a moment after I enable this as well. So this is the first vent. This thing fires scouts. So scouts come out of this first vent, if I manage to not sort of like hit it, which I managed to somehow. So scouts periodically come out of there. The one below there, instead, is where glaives come out of. So this thing is going to launch periodically the new glaive Thargoid hunters, which are incredibly annoying for a set of reasons that we're going to get to. The vent that fires glaives is also home to one of the new items that that have specific Thargoid materials associated with them. So this launch to membrane residue is something that you can fire on, and you don't even need anti-xeno weapons to fire on it. You can fire it just with any kind of laser or anything really, and it will spawn these materials, which are the grade 3 materials, phasing membrane residues, which then you can just go and pick up with any kind of like cargo scoop, the way you would pick up pretty much any material. So let's do that in a second here. And here we are. So these have no use, by the way, right now, other than we'd expect them to be of use in the future at some point. So it's kind of pretty optional to grab any of these, and I kind of missed it, so I think I'm going to skip this one. Retract my cargo scoop so that we can keep moving, and off we go. Thermal vent beams work, and thermal vents beam work throughout the Goid. So you can just fire a beam on the hull of a Goid, and as you can see, you'll stay at 0 heat, which is going to come in handy to avoid detection from the patrolling Thargoids. The grade 1 material associated with this thing instead come from these weird green things, as you can see I'm pointing at one here, which are called coarse hull surfaces. They only become visible once you're within 500 meters. Similar thing, if you fire at them with any weapon, like they'll spawn their grade 1 corresponding materials. Anyone spawns a variable number, typically 1 or 2, and these are called hardened surface fragments. And again, you can go and scoop them up like you scoop up any other kind of normal material in space. Similarly, there is no known use for these materials. They're there to be grabbed, but without any obvious use, although your bets are probably as good as mine that Palin and Ramtar are going to find some use for them in some upcoming module or some upcoming activity that they'll have. There is a third material which is associated with a different side of the Goid entirely, as we're still on the underside of the Goid right now as we're moving around, and is instead associated with one of the most significant features of the Thargoid itself. So let's retract our scoop so we actually move around faster. Let's give ourselves a boost and move to the front side of the Titan. The front side of the Titan is dominated by the so-called maw, which is this structure which essentially launches and recovers interceptors. You can see what is, I think, Cyclops going back in, or something coming out of it. It's something coming out of it. That looks like a Clops that just came out of it. There's nothing that you can do with a maw right now, or there's an expectation that we'll be able to interact with it in the future. So kind of have to leave it alone. What happens here instead is these vents open up at periodic intervals, and you can actually go in and enter one. I'm not going to show that now because there's sort of nothing really interesting inside of them other than that yellow thingy. But these appear to be the obvious weak points of this thing, and they spawn these D10 abrasions around them, which are the ones that spawn the G5 material associated with this Titan, which is called heat then something something. We'll find out in a second once we kind of burn off some of these. Same thing, you can fire them with pretty much anything, and this produces a grade 5 heat exposure specimen, which again you can grab at any point in time. Now you'll notice, so long as I'm cold, I haven't really attracted attention, and I'm able to sort of like move around broadly undisturbed. Like, so the one exception would be if glaives start being around. Glaives have an annoying tendency of being able to detect you also without the need for a strong heat signature. There's these power conduits, I don't know what else to call them, these orange things that run throughout the 8 petals, which pulse at regular intervals. The faster the pulse, the closer the Thargoid is to executing what is essentially a kind of sort of a special attack, which is something where it glows blue like there was a large magnetic field all around it, which is very damaging in the area. Like a magnetic field, it basically connects to the points of these things in front of them all, to the points of the thing on the back of it, and consequently, if you're straight in front or straight behind it, you're generally safe from the magnetic field effect, or whatever that blue thing that you're probably going to see in a moment is called, or would be called. The Titan also has turrets which shoot missiles and fire guns at you, but for whatever reason they haven't sort of like really popped up. Oh, they're there. They have their dual fire turrets and sort of like the equivalent for missiles. I'm moving around as a glaive had noticed my attention and started firing missiles at me, which is annoying, but the good thing about glaives is they tend to have a very short-term memory and forget about you very quickly. Turrets can be destroyed, as you can see, very quickly. On the flip side, however, turrets respawn constantly, so destroying them has little effect in advancing the fight or really doing much. As you can see, the glaive that I've now targeted has already lost interest in me. In fact, it's already off of my scanner. There's nothing you can do here with the Xenoscanner. Like, I brought a Xenoscanner, I use it to aim my guns really. More than that, I don't really have a use for it. because nothing here that can be targeted with anything like really responds to the enhanced xenoscanner of any kind. Like, the only way to interact with these 3 different items that I mentioned is to actually shoot and gather the materials that break off of them. Oh, something's coming out of the, most likely a glaive. There you go, that's a glaive. As you can see, you can actually get a xenoscan on the glaive, and it'll tell you it's a glaive, and that's about it. It'll tell you what the shield amount is when it does charge a shield, which is after it uses its lightning attack. As you can see, that vent open up again right now. They open up on a periodic basis. I personally haven't been able to discern a pattern other than just a timer of some kind as to why and how and when these open up. It doesn't seem to be linked to a special attack either, as you saw from this video, they open up twice, and the Thargoid has not used its magnetic field special attack anytime in between those periods. The turrets are interesting. So long as you're cold, as I've been now, they don't seem to really see you at all, and they ignore you. But if your heat goes about a certain amount on a periodic basis, they start shooting at you. In that sense, the glaives are particularly interesting because they're the only thing that responds to you also being cold. Boom. As you can see, this kind of like gets subsumed by this little flower-like thingy, and then it'll regenerate after a little bit. There's a lot of turrets, as you can see around here, and a few Thargoid wakes of interceptors that come and go, even outside of the mall. There's ways for the Thargoid to sort of like join the Titan instance without actually having to go through the mall. And something I think I got attention of another glaive, as that's the only thing that would see me at this temperature level. But again, as I mentioned, it's easy to kind of like lose them in navigating the overall structure of the Titan. There isn't really much more right now that we can do to interact with the Titan itself, as there's no way to scan it. The xenoscanner as we have it and as operates doesn't really work with something this big, so that's not an option. We can gather the materials, but we can't really do much with materials. It's pretty obvious that the vents, the 8 vents that are on the pedals, are its weak spot, but there is no obvious way to block, sabotage, blow up, or really do anything with those vents. I even tried getting stuck in one with my crate, successfully so, but nothing happens. You just sit there until the vent reopens again, and then when the vent opens, it kind of like fires you out. That's really it as far as Titan is concerned. It's remarkable. I mean, I wanted to stick around to see if I could somehow see it trigger its special effect. I haven't found a way to sort of like trigger it manually, and I don't know if it's on a timer or something else. Maybe shooting the turret will do something as to accelerating. It's now kind of flashing pretty fast as far as the power conduit is concerned, so chances are that it might do its thing soon. If my interpretation of the power conduit's pulsing has anything to do with actually it doing its thing. But actually, it opened the vents again. So who knows? Maybe the power conduit pulsing has to do with the vents opening more than it has to do with the special attack firing. Let's see, it destroy some of more of the turrets and see if we can get its attention and get it to pulse do its big EMP pulse, because it is probably like one of the most remarkable visual effects I've seen in this game, and it is quite damaging. Like on a 2,000 hit points crate Mark II, which is what I'm flying right now, it can shred up to 40% of the hull, so about 800 hit points worth of damage if you're in the damaged zone of the magnetic field once it does fire. Other notable things around the Titan and the area around it, immediately around it, is there's so-called seed mines which essentially are static versions. You can see point out one of those here. They are static versions of the caustic generators that exist outside in the caustic air, which, other than not generating caustic, are pretty much the same exact thing. They can be blown up like the caustic generators. They create corrosive mechanisms like caustic generators. The only thing is they cannot be scanned with a Xeno scanner, and they don't have a research limpet docking port, so you cannot get caustic tissue samples out of them. Now, interestingly, the Thargoid turrets are not immune to regular weapons. As you can see, my beam is actually doing quite a bit of damage. They do die extremely fast to anti-Xeno weapons, like you've just seen a short burst of multi-cannons takes a turret down in almost no time. The thing is, there's a lot of these, so if these start shooting at you, they can hurt. The good thing about them is they have about stormtrooper level accuracy, so they're very easy to dodge, and it's rare to find yourself in a situation where you're kind of like being actively hit by a number of those and have no way of avoiding it. So here we are. I'm actually quite curious as to why this thing has not fired its magnetic pulse field yet, because at this point I would have imagined to have seen it since we've been here for a while, and we've gone through now the third cycle of events opening up. So it's unclear what exactly triggers that effect. I'm trying to keep destroying some of the turrets and see if that gets his attention. It might be something to do with detecting enemies, which I, based on my heat level, think managed to not get detected at all. Or it might have something to do with a number of commanders in an instance, assume there's being more than one. Maybe just with a single commander in an instance, which is one of the few times I've been flying here completely solo. It might not be triggering that effect. Either way, it's something that requires additional research. It does happen that this Thargoid instance, this Titan instance, can become bugged. I've seen this Thargoid basically spawn nothing and just sit there, where you can just basically fire around it and the vents open and close, but it does nothing in terms of spawning glaives or spawning interceptors. I've seen this Titan stuck on the EMP field, on the magnetic field. I've seen it become blue, fire its field, and then just remain stuck on the overall field itself. So there's a lot of instability associated with the instance right now, which again, it's not completely unexpected for a new launch, but it is something that to be aware of in case you find yourself in an instance that doesn't behave as you would expect. It may be something that you need to reset, just like we tend to reset mega ships and other instances that have similar issues. Let me see, maybe going into or close to a mall might be something that triggers the effect that we were talking about earlier, because nothing else has been successful at getting its attention right now, and the one thing I haven't done is I haven't really gotten close to or gotten into the mall. So let's try and do that and see if that gets its attention and triggers the overall magnetic field or whatever that thing is called. When it's yellow, it means the portal is open, which entails interceptors coming out or interceptors going in. In this case, a Cyclops is coming out. I think it's a Cyclops, could be a Basilisk. Yeah, it's a Cyclops. Cyclops just came out. We could go in, we can explore them all, but again, there's really not much to explore at this point in time. Not much to see other than the fact that it's big. And we've been trying kind of going through a portal regardless, and all it gets is you get to, bonk your nose onto that thing, which acts as a solid barrier, so there's no going into it for the time being. So anyway, as you can see, so long as you're cold and keep your heat below a 20% threshold, even the glaives need to get relatively close to detect you. And otherwise you're relatively safe flying around the Titan. If you do get detected, you have to be careful, because the attention of a dozen interceptors and a couple of glaives can quickly send you to a revive screen if you're not very fast at getting out of their line of fire. The other good thing is the Interceptors has a lot of ridges and canyons that actually allow you to get out of the line of fire very quickly, but obviously requires some degree of piloting. A lot of pilots have mentioned finding their flight model to be somewhat odd around the time. I've had that same experience too. I've tried disabling rotational correction, which is what helps at least navigating around carrier and other dockable stations. I can't say if it really helped. It might just have been a subjective thing. It might also be that we're just not used to flying around something of this scale, like that is just, you know, sitting around there in space. But again, more research is required to figure out whether that's a thing or not. So let's see, something is, I want to see if like actually getting my heat up. So I'm gonna engage silent running, and then I'm gonna start boosting around so I get my heat up. And then I'm gonna disable silent running and see if I can get the attention of, I'm definitely gonna get a lot of attention, but let's see if I can trigger the overall field, the magnetic field that I've been talking about this whole video, which I haven't been able to show you because it hasn't triggered for some reason. Alright, now I'm almost at 60% heat, which is where basically they will be able to see me from roughly across the galaxy. I disable silent running and immediately I get fire from the turrets and missiles and things. As you can see, they are relatively easy to dodge, and even the missiles and things don't do very much damage. And this turret has annoyed me, so I will shoot it. It doesn't make a pretty spectacular light show though. Like that's definitely for sure. I kind of like got more damage by getting to ram the Titan than actually being shot by the turrets. And use one of many repair links I brought, and repair also my MRP is where I'm at. Something's been blowing up. I think it was a mine, a caustic seed mine at that point, as those are heat sensitive and those tend to blow up if they acknowledge your heat from a distance. There's more incoming missiles, presumably from the turrets. This, as I mentioned, two types of turrets. There's missile turrets, and there's the dual gun fire turrets. Yep, those are mines exploding with distance. Alright, now that we've been heating up, here, we triggered finally the Thargoid doing its EMP field. Like, we're gonna move so that we can get out of its damaging range. If we can manage to get into the middle of that section, we should be out of it, but no, we didn't manage, so we're gonna getting damaged by the field, but at this range it doesn't feel like it's doing a lot of damage. As you can see, this is a really incredibly remarkable visual effect. Also, interestingly, it's pretty much the same effect as the one we saw on the Salvation site. I'll let you decide what you make of that. With that, I think we've looked at everything there is to be known today about the Titan. What we don't know is if a full-scale assault will yield any kind of advancement of its behavior or not, and that's what we're going to find out Friday. So join us on Friday for the Operation Spark Assault on the Titan. We're going to bring probably up to 50 to 60 commanders in an instance and see what we can do. Glory to mankind, fly safe commanders, enjoy the game.